Today, we're diving into a really short but incredibly powerful passage from an ancient letter. It's got a warning about a subtle danger that, honestly, is just as relevant now as it was 2,000 years ago. Right off the bat, the text hits us with this urgent plea so that we do not drift away. And you gotta wonder, right? Drift away from what? And why did the author sound so concerned? Well, let's get into it. To really get the weight of this warning, we first have to understand who it was written for. This letter, the book of Hebrews, was sent to a community of early Christians who were facing a massive existential crisis. I mean, just try to imagine being completely cut off from your community, your job, your entire family. The pressure they were under was just immense. So it's no surprise that many were tempted to just abandon this new, dangerous faith and go back to the safety and familiarity of their old traditions. This wasn't some theoretical problem for them. We're talking life and death. Okay, so it's in this super high-stakes environment that the author issues the first of 5 major warnings in the letter. It's a wake-up call, really, a command to pay close attention before it's too late. Now, what's so brilliant here is the metaphor he uses. The author doesn't say don't run away or don't abandon ship. He says don't drift. You know, drifting is a slow, quiet, almost unnoticeable process. It's what happens when you're not really paying attention, when you're not anchored to anything. And that, right there, is what makes it so incredibly dangerous. So, to really make this warning hit home, the author draws this incredibly powerful comparison. He puts 2 messages side by side, the one his audience was tempted to go back to, and the one they were in danger of drifting away from. And believe me, the difference is just stark. And this right here is the core of his whole argument. He's basically saying, look, the old message, the law giving to Moses at Mount Sinai, that was delivered by angels. It was totally binding, and every single time someone broke it, there was a just punishment. So, here's the kicker. If ignoring a message from angels had serious consequences, how much more serious will it be to neglect this so great a salvation that was delivered by the Lord Jesus himself, confirmed by people who saw it with their own eyes, and backed up by God with signs and wonders? The stakes have been raised exponentially. The author uses this phrase, so great a salvation, and he just kind of assumes his readers know what he's talking about. But for us, it's probably worth hitting pause for a second to define it. What is this thing that's so important that you absolutely cannot ignore it? In this context, salvation is all about deliverance. It means freedom from the ultimate consequences of doing wrong, what the text calls sin and death. And this freedom was made possible through the life and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And to show just how seriously God takes disobedience, the author could have pointed to a giant figure like Moses. Remember that story? In a moment of total frustration, God told him to speak to a rock to get water, but Moses struck it instead. Seems like a small thing, right? But the consequence was huge. The man who led his people for 40 years was forbidden from ever entering the promised land. The implication is pretty clear. If even Moses was held accountable, nobody gets a free pass. All right, so if the big danger is drifting, the next logical question has to be, what causes it? And, probably more important, what's the cure? How do you stay anchored when all these currents are trying to pull you away? The text points to a few causes, and you'll notice how subtle they are. This isn't about some big dramatic rebellion. It's about being unanchored because you're not really engaging in study or prayer. It's about being a new convert who gets swept away before your roots have a chance to grow deep. Or it's just the constant quiet pull of cultural tides and getting preoccupied with things that, in the grand scheme of things, just don't really matter. And if the problem is not having an anchor, well, the solution is to find one. The text is crystal clear. The cure for drifting is being intentional. It's the consistent, deliberate practice of devotion, of study, of grounding yourself in foundational teaching. It's an active process, not something that just happens to you. So let's bring this ancient warning right into our own world. It's really easy to think of this as a problem for people facing, intense persecution. But the metaphor of drifting, that's absolutely universal. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? We all face these subtle and powerful tides and currents. Today, they might not be Roman soldiers. They're the endless notifications on our phones, the cultural pressure to think a certain way, the constant demand to be busy, and a million other distractions that just tug and pull at our attention. So the final question is for you.
You don't have to be facing some huge crisis of faith to be drifting. You just have to stop paying attention. What are the subtle currents in your life? The distractions, the pressures, the little things that take up too much space, that are pulling you away from what you value most? Answering that question might just be the first step to grabbing hold of the anchor.